This is the Superpowered Mind podcast for inquiring individuals who are tired of the struggle for peace, happiness, and clarity. I'm Claire Diamond, ready to help you explore the principles of the mind, the self, and reality to unlock ultimate mental freedom. This podcast is the one to listen to if you're ready to experience the capabilities of the superpowered mind. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our 40th episode. And today we're looking at healing. And I was watching Married at First Sight. For those of you who are not familiar with it, much more cultured than I am, the couples get married. They're total strangers. They get married. And then the whole of the program is how these couples work out together, the different blips and obstacles in their relationship. And at one of the dinner parties, the husband was given a question to ask of his wife. And the question was, what do you appreciate most in me? And the wife's response was, you're the first person to tell me that I'm beautiful. You make me feel beautiful. You make me feel safe and gorgeous and attractive. And everyone was like, oh, so lovely, so lovely. And then the experts watching in their little panel were, oh, isn't that wonderful? But my God, no, it's not. It's so not. And this is the culture that we're learning all the time, is that this idea of what we are can somehow be secured and made stable by words that come in from outside, by someone else's view of us, by whether someone says the right things, does the right things. And it is so false. And it is not just false, but it's actually creating an epidemic of mental ill health. Because that thing, that element of being in that moment, the woman's belief in what she is, in this sort of separate entity that has to be secure enough, has to believe enough, and then she'll be okay. That is the only problem ever in anything. And what is happening? That was such a great example of how he was meaningless in that relationship. The question is, what do you appreciate most in me? Nothing about his qualities, nothing about his personality, what he does, his work, his talents, his gifts, nothing. How I appreciate that you say a few sentences that make me feel okay, make me feel worthy, make me feel good. He could be a robot, and literally this is why there are now AI boyfriends. Because what else is required, really? If that's it's literally a drug being fed into the mind that lights up some neurons, lights up some pleasure centers. I'm worthy, I'm okay. And it's all about me. The person saying it is completely irrelevant. It's all about me. And this looks, on the program, this looks like healing because the woman is happy. She's not crying all the time, which she will. Of course she will, because that isn't sustainable, is it? That drug, that high of a sentence temporarily making me feel that I'm okay is like heroin. It is 100% not sustainable. And the low from it, the crash down, because each time will require a little bit more, will require more sentences, more conviction, more declarations of how wonderful I am. And no one can provide it. No one can fill that hole, that gaping sense of lack, which the vulnerable ego identity is. So what I wanted to make clear from that example is that stabilizing the identity isn't healing it. It's a temporary, I call them, mini rewards. It's a temporary boost a promotion, a compliment, someone asking us out on a date, a pay rise, winning a race, getting some sort of recognition. It's temporary. So temporary. And when it looks like it's saying something about this separate entity and its value, because it looks like for her, it looked like there's a separate entity that is controlling how she looks. And that separate entity is being recognized. But it's nonsense, isn't it? There's nothing controlling that. And there's no controller of actions either. Actions are happening, words are happening. And the more the mind settles into that, which is really the acknowledgement that this idea of separation, this idea of a separate, independent controller of looks and worth and actions and skills and words, the more that starts to disintegrate. Once we start looking at this, it's completely illogical that there is a separate entity, completely illogical. And through this exploration, those mini rewards, those compliments, those reinforcements of the ego identity they're interesting, that someone saying you're beautiful, it's interesting information. Comments about appearance or comments about work, comments about our actions, comments about our behavior are useful information. And they provide feedback and data about the thing. So if nice words, praise and compliments aren't healing this fragile ego entity, how is it healed? Well, let's start by looking at what it is really. So this idea of ourselves is a mental construct, a subconscious construct of beliefs that is formed when the brain starts to create conceptual ideas. It's a developmental stage as a child where words come to represent certain mental frameworks. That our mum says, this is the sky. And we look at the sky and we start to understand about the sky and aeroplanes and clouds and weather. And it's all held, it's this incredible human brain holds these concepts, and then it can manipulate these concepts. It can move them around like pieces on a chessboard to plan, to imagine, to create, to arrange things, to solve problems. Incredible power. No one is trying to get rid of that in any way. And at the same time, we're understanding that those concepts aren't reality. They're representations. And above all, more than anything, the concept of I is a representation, total representation, because it doesn't exist anywhere. This I is entirely made of beliefs. There's a body, for sure, but the I itself, that is, my body. So there's an I that has a body. What is that I independent of the body? It doesn't exist. It's a construct of mind. It's a shorthand way of representing life, intelligence, beingness, existence, localized through this perceptual form, but it doesn't exist anywhere tangibly. And yet it can take over everything. It runs the show. When it's a fragile construct of lack, an absolute desperation to find stability, find security, it infiltrates itself into every conversation, every interaction. And small moments of reinforcing that identity, saying you're worthy, I love you, you're valid, they are temporary fixes, because the real healing takes place in recognizing that trying to stabilize and secure a mental concept is an unfulfillable task. And that's the ultimate shift then, because now the purpose of life is no longer to secure that identity. The purpose of life is the ongoing revelation of what we are, what's true about us, what this experience of being really is. And that's the moment that healing can genuinely start taking place. That's the shift, that's the switch over into a mind that is now being used for exploration and curiosity and truth-seeking, and no longer wasting its time, all its energy, all its resources in stabilizing something that can't be stabilized. So what we look at in our courses, and especially on the Reset course, where we have a proper time to do this together, we see the areas in our life that are really challenging, where the identity is absolutely on edge, it's hyper-vigilant. There's a desperation to find some sort of solid ground. And it really looks like that solid ground will be found by having the right experience of being, having the right success or the right money or the right relationship or the right adulation around us. So in that space, any form of rejection or indifference or comparisons to others who are doing better, being left out or forgotten or overlooked, these are like death. And that intensity of emotional reaction, psychological reaction, is saying, right now the mind is insane. It's locked into an identity. It's trying to stabilize existence, when really, underneath all of that mental turmoil, existence is just happening, isn't it? There's consciousness, there's content of experience, there's a body that's breathing, moving, digesting. And all the time, these areas where there's most confrontation are the real gifts of our life that say, right now, what the mind is believing isn't true. And so right now, there is space in this moment to have this emotional turmoil. Nothing can get rid of that. We just have it. It's not something to be got rid of by trying to force the people in our lives to say what we want to hear or do the things that we think they have to do in order for us to be okay. No, that emotional turmoil is there to be parented by us, by the consciousness that we are, and the allowing, and particularly shame above all, really, because shame is the ultimate emotion of the identified mind, because that identified mind believes it's the doer of everything. So in the example I used at the start, the shame for that woman of not feeling beautiful is because the mind is so identified. It looks as though it's saying something about a real thing, but there's no one controlling anything. There's just a body, and this identification of this is me, and everyone has to believe that I'm beautiful in order for me to be okay, is, oh my goodness, such a never-ending wild goose chase. So this healing space is having the emotional turmoil without putting it on anyone else's or anything else's shoulders to make us feel okay again. We're not after the hit of the drug anymore. We're seeing that the drug just isn't required. The drug is feeding a belief system that just isn't true. And so consciousness, allowing the feelings, allowing everything to come in, welcoming it, really welcoming it, being the parent of that emotional state is so profoundly powerful. And all the time, the mind engaged now in curiosity and exploration. What's really going on here? What's really true? What's really at stake? And I call these the real peak experiences. Maslow coined the term in 1964, peak experiences, which he described as rare, exciting, oceanic, deeply moving, exhilarating, elevating experiences that generate an advanced form of perceiving reality. The mind chases that state because that bliss, that exhilaration of no separation, of just being life, being existence, being consciousness, is the truth of what we are. And yet what's happened is the belief of what we are, this limited, lacking, vulnerable, insecure entity, is trying to find wholeness. It's trying to latch on to what it thinks it needs in order to return to that state, which is a state of pure wholeness. And it will never do it. It cannot ever do it. And so I'm interested in real peak experiences, which are those moments in which we're really confronted, where there's a sort of agony of survival of that entity, where there's huge emotional turmoil, and being able to stay in the midst of that as pure attention, as inquiry, as a powerful mind, not stopping at the surface level of this is what's going on, but really looking at what's happening. That's the ultimate healing experience. It's a mind returning to sanity. And from there, people can say we're beautiful. It's great, but it's not survival. It's not a crisis if they don't. It's not on their shoulders to continually make us feel something. Now there's a proper relationship in which we can actually appreciate other people for what they are, for what they do, for what they bring, that isn't about how they make us feel. Because that side of things is for us to look at. That's our own healing to do for ourselves. And it's true in relationships, it's true in work, it's true in families, it's true in money, in our careers, everything, our health. It's the healing is on us, and that allows for true freedom, like really a mind and a body moving out into the world, full immersion, true sanity, true freedom. Yeah. So thank you, everyone. So much love. Bye. Thank you for listening to Superpowered Mind with me, Claire Diamond. If you want extra support in the exploration of your mind, download our exclusive subliminal recording, especially for podcast listeners, on bit.ly/podcast subliminal.